Extra work is not the problem. Free work is the problem. There is nothing wrong with the customer asking for more. Another area, more cleanup, more prep, a small add-on, a change after the job starts. That happens. The problem is when your crew does the extra work, your business absorbs the labor and materials, and the invoice never changes. That is how profit disappears quickly. Not because the job is bad, because the extra work is never priced, approved, or collected. I'm Josh Savage, founder of Savage Financials. I help installation contractors see where cash profit and job margins are leaking inside their business. And one of the cleanest ways to protect profits is to stop treating extra work like an awkward conversation. Extra work should have a process. The customer asks, we confirm the scope, we price the adjustment, they approve it, then the crew does the work. Clean, simple, professional. That is how extra work becomes paid work instead of another quiet hit to your margin. I was going through a completed job for contractor recently that was a really good example of this. There was a kitchen and bathroom model for a customer they'd worked with before. And this was a customer they liked, gave them a few property, had already given them work for, and had referred them to other people. This wasn't a customer they wanted to fight with over every little thing. The original job was straightforward. They had the kitchen scope, they had the bathroom scope, labor was estimated, materials were estimated, the price was agreed to. And when we look back at the original estimate, the job should have made good money. Then the work started. One of the first changes was the vanity. The vanity itself was already part of the remodel, because after seeing everything start to come together, the customer decided they wanted to dress it up a little more. Different faucet, different knobs and pulls, a couple of the little finished pieces around it changed. Nothing crazy. We're not talking about ripping the bathroom apart and starting over. So they took care of it. There was a little additional cost in the fixtures and hardware, a little extra time making everything work, but nobody stopped and wrote a change order. Yeah, we can do that. Then the kitchen, he wanted a couple of additional outlets. The electrician was already there. The wall was already open. This is probably the easiest kind of extra work to give away because everybody looks at it and thinks, he's standing right there, just do it. So they did. No change order. Then he changed his mind about where he wanted the kitchen sink. Not across the room or anything dramatic, just far enough from the original location that the plumbing had to be adjusted. Again, they were already working in the kitchen. The plumber was already part of the job, so they moved it. No change order. Then there was the bathroom. Once they got into the work, the customer asked them to take care of some wall prep outside of the area they had originally scoped. There wasn't a whole room. There were a few spots that looked bad next to the new work, and once everything around them was finished, they stood out. And I understand the customer's perspective. You just paid to have the bathroom redone. Now you've got a nice finished area sitting next to a few ugly spots on the wall. So he asked, can you guys fix those while you're here? Yeah, we can take care of it. Some patching, some sanding, a little more prep before paint, not a huge request, no change order. Then there were a few smaller things like that throughout the project. Move this slightly. Can you take care of this while you're here? Can we change this? Can you clean this area up too? And almost every time the answer was yes. Then, toward the end of the project, the customer asked if they could finish earlier than the date they had originally discussed. He had people coming into town and wanted the kitchen and bathroom completely finished before they arrived. At that point, the contractor was close enough that he thought they could make it happen. But making it happen meant keeping guys there later. They had a couple of nights where the crew stayed past when they normally would have left. They moved some labor around from another job, and they got it finished for him. And again, no real adjustment to the price. The customer was happy. The job looked good. Everything was finished before his guests arrived. He paid. And from the customer's perspective, this is probably a fantastic experience. He asked for things and they took care of them. He needed the schedule moved and they made it happen. That's good service. Then we reviewed the job and the margin was basically gone. That didn't make sense at first because the original job hadn't been underbid. So we pulled the original estimate and started comparing it to what they actually did. Instead of looking at the job as one big number, we started reconstructing the changes, the different faucet and hardware at the vanity, the additional time getting those installed, the extra outlets, the electrical labor and material that went with them, moving the sink and adjusting the plumbing, the additional wall prep in the bathroom, the other small things the crew had taken care of while they were there. Then the extra labor for moving the completion date and the overtime required to actually hit it. By the time we finished going through it, there had been around 10 separate changes or additions to that job. And that's when it made sense. No single one of them killed the job. That's why nobody noticed it happening. The vanity didn't kill the job. 2 outlets didn't kill the job. Moving the sink didn't kill the job. Patching a few areas of wall didn't kill the job. Staying late one night didn't kill the job. But the company wasn't asked to do one of those things. They're asked to do all of them. and almost none of it had made its way onto the invoice. The customer had asked for more work. The company had performed more work. The company had paid employees for performing that work. The company had paid for the additional material for that work. The invoice was still basically for the job they had originally quoted, reconstructed what those changes had actually cost. And this wasn't about going back to the customer afterwards and handing them some surprise bill. At that point, the company had already made a mistake. I wanted to know what they had given away. When we added up the extra labor, the material, the additional trade, work, and overtime, it explained almost the entire difference between the margin we expected and what the job actually produced. The contractor said something that really explained how it happened. None of it felt like enough money to have a conversation about at the time. That's exactly the problem. Nobody asked them for thousands of dollars of free work. They asked them for $200 here, an hour there, a couple $100 somewhere else. Keep 2 guys late, have the plumber adjust this while he's already here. Have the electrician add this while the wall is already open. Fix this because you're already painting next to it. Every additional decision felt cheaper than stalking and having a conversation with a good customer. But the business doesn't get to calculate its profit one request at a time. At the end of the job, all those costs get added together. The other thing working against him was the relationship. This was a valuable customer. He owned multiple properties. He had referred work to them. They wanted him calling them for their next remodel. So there was this feeling that constantly saying that's extra would make them difficult to work with. The problem wasn't charging for the work. The problem was they didn't have a process for it. Because if you wait until the end of the job, then it is awkward. Now you're saying, remember when we moved the sink 3 weeks ago? Remember those outlets? Remember the vanity? Remember when we patched those walls? Remember when we stayed late to finish before your guests arrived? Here's another bill. I wouldn't want to have that conversation either. So the first thing we changed what the crew said when somebody asked for extra work. We changed the contract at the beginning of the job. We added a clear change order process to the upfront agreement. The scope in the contract is the plan. If the customer wants something that deviates from that plan, it requires a change order. If they want to add something, change something, move something, do something different, expand an area, or change the agreed schedule, that's a deviation from the original plan. It gets documented. We figure out what it does to labor, figure out what it does to material, we figure out whether it affects another trade, we figure out whether it changes the schedule. Then the customer sees the adjustment and approves it before the work happens. That way, this conversation isn't being invented halfway through the project. The customer already agreed to the process when they hired you. So now, when the customer asks for 2 more outlets while the electrician is standing there, the answer isn't, sorry, that's extra, and it isn't, sure, we'll just take care of it. It's, absolutely, that's outside of the original plan. So we'll put together the change order and get it over to you. Once you approve it, we'll have him take care of it while he's here. Same thing with the sink, same thing with the vanity, same thing with the additional wall prep, same thing with the moving completion date. The customer isn't being punished for changing their mind. They're allowed to change their mind. We're just not pretending the job stayed the same when it didn't. And we made the rule very simple. The contract defines the plan. Anything that deviates from the plan requires a change order. The change gets documented. The price and schedule impact get identified. The customer approves it. Then the work happens. That's what would have protected the margin on this job. Not saying no to the customer, not being less accommodating, just making sure that when the job changed, the agreement changed with it. The biggest lesson from that job was that you cannot judge extra work by how small the individual request feels. That's how this gets away from you. An extra outlet isn't going to destroy your margin. Moving a sink probably isn't going to destroy your margin. An hour of additional prep isn't going to destroy your margin. 2 guys staying late one night probably isn't going to destroy your margin. But that's not how the job actually happens. You get the outlet, then the sink, then the prep, then another small request, then the customer wants the deadline moved. And by the time you add everything together, you've given away a meaningful amount of the job. That's why I think the change order process actually needs to start before there is a change. It belongs in the original contract. Your upfront agreement should establish this is the scope. This is the plan for pricing. And if we deviate from this plan, we use a change order. That matters because you're establishing the rules when nobody is under pressure. The customer isn't standing there with an electrician waiting. Your crew isn't trying to keep working. You're not 3 weeks into a project. You're simply agreeing up front, this price is based on this scope. If the scope changes, the price and potentially the timeline can change with it. Now when something happens during the job, nobody should be surprised by the process. And I would define the change broadly. It isn't just The customer wants another room remodeled. If it deviates from what you price, it's a change. Additional work is a change. Removing something and doing something different is a change. Moving something from where it is supposed to go is a change. Different fixtures that change your costs or labor are a change. Additional prep outside the original scope is a change. Changing the completion date can be a change. Anything that causes the actual job to deviate from the job you originally priced needs to go through that process. That doesn't automatically mean every change costs the customer a fortune. Sometimes the price adjustment might be small. Sometimes there may be no price adjustment at all, but it still gets documented because now you have a record of what the customer requested and what the company agreed to do. The other thing I would pay attention to is why your people are saying yes. Most of the time, they're trying to take care of the customer. The electrician thinks, the wall is already open. The guy doing the bathroom thinks, I'm already patching right next to it. The project manager thinks, this is a good customer. Let's just handle it. Everybody is trying to provide good service. The problem is you've accidentally made your field employees responsible for deciding what the company gives away. And that's not their job. The crew needs a very simple rule. If it's in the plan, do it. If it's different from the plan, stop and get a change order. That's it. Now, the installer doesn't have to decide whether something is worth charging for. He doesn't have to negotiate with the homeowner. He doesn't have to worry about damaging the relationship. He can say, absolutely, let me get the change documented and approved, and then we'll take care of it. The office or project manager prices it, the customer approves it, then the crew proceeds. And the same thing applies to time. Your schedule is part of the agreement. The customer wants a job finished 2 days earlier, and doing that requires overtime, additional people, weekend work, or moving another project. The job changed. That belongs in a change order too, and the customer may happily pay for it. They may say, my family is coming Thursday. I don't care what it costs. I need this finished Wednesday. Great. Now you can give them exactly what they want and make money for doing it. That's the part I don't want contractors to miss. A change order isn't a way to tell the customers no. It's a way to say yes without giving the work away. Extra work can actually be great work. You're already on site. You've already acquired the customer. Your crew and equipment are already there. The customer already trusts you, but the financial agreement to move with the work. And I would also look backward through the completed jobs. Take a few recent projects and put the final job next to the original contract. Did we build exactly what we priced? Where did it change? What did we add? What did we move? What did we redo differently at the customer's request? Did the timeline change? Did we incur overtime because of that? Then look at which of those things actually had approved change orders. That's where you're going to find the leak. And once you see the types of changes that happen repeatedly, make sure your upfront contracting processes are clear enough to catch them. Then make the actual change order incredibly easy. The harder the process is, the more likely your people are to skip it. You don't need some giant approval packet for a small change. You need to document. Here's what is changing from the original plan. Here's what it adds or removes from the price. Here's what it does to the timeline. If anything, please approve it. Save the approval. Then do the work. And the rule stays the same from the first day of the project to the last. The contract defines the plan. Anything that deviates from that plan requires a change order before the work is performed. There can obviously be legitimate emergency or safety exceptions, but the customer asks while we are already standing there isn't an exception. That's exactly why you created the process, because you're not protecting yourself from the customer, you're protecting the agreement. The customer knows exactly what they're getting. They know exactly what they're paying. Your crew knows exactly what is approved. Your office knows exactly what to invoice. And when you review the job afterwards, the final job and the final invoice actually match. Because if you quoted one job and ultimately built a different job, the price needs to move with it. The goal is not to nickel and dime customers. The goal is to stop giving away your labor, material, and crew time for free. When the change order process is clear, everyone wins. The customer knows what they're getting. The crew knows what is approved. The invoice matches the work, and the business is not eating costs that should have been paid for. That is the vacation. Extra work gets handled cleanly. No awkward guessing. No missed charges. No, they'll figure it out later. In the next video, I'll talk about how job costs get eaten when nobody is tracking the leak. And if you want help finding where extra work, job costs, or cash flow are quietly eating your profit, book a call here at savagefinancials.com.